Did you know that Nintendo has more fighting games than just Smash? No, I'm being serious. Today we're putting 3 of Nintendo's most notable fighters that all happen to be from the Switch era, ARMS, Pokkén Tournament DX, and Smash Ultimate, in a head-to-head, or rather glove-to-arm to paw showdown. And while I will crown a winner at the end, this episode of Triple Versus is less about picking the objectively best fighting game and more about exploring what makes each game unique, interesting, and worth talking about. I'll be discussing each of these games by going through their origins, gameplay and characters, stages and modes, and each game's public reception. So let's break these down and figure out what each game really brings to the table, whether it's zoning out people with stretchy arms, or zoning out people with lightning balls, or zoning out people with arrows. Okay, you're just gonna have to keep watching the video to see how I'll elaborate on this. And if you go on to enjoy this video, then be sure to leave a like and stretch an arm to that subscribe button. That's a ARMS reference if you didn't. No, you got it. As always, we're going through this in chronological order, so we'll be starting with ARMS. I'm Machin Sprite, and now please sit back and enjoy this episode of Triple Versus. ARMS launched in 2017 as Nintendo's new big fighting IP for the Switch, developed by the Mario Kart 8 team. Despite its goofy visuals and stretchy arm boxing, this wasn't just another motion-controlled gimmick game. Nintendo actually marketed ARMS as a big competitive multiplayer experience, with tournaments, test punch demos, and a big push to actually build a scene. The game introduced players to a quirky world with spring-loaded fighters led by Springman and Ribbon Girl, and promised deep mechanics under its lighthearted surface. But how does it actually play? Let me break it down for you. ARMS is a 1v1, 2v2, or even 4-way free-for-all fighting game, but not in the usual sense. You're not fighting on a 2D plane with health bars and meters overhead like most fighters. Instead, you're in a wide open 3D arena with the game's camera placed behind you, and your job is simple: punch your opponent, but from far away. That's the gimmick, or rather appeal, of this game. Everyone's arms are made of noodles, springs, or whatever flexible material the devs could get away with. You don't just throw a punch, you launch it, curving it mid-air, kind of like a guided missile from Fortnite. You can dash, jump, block, grab, the usual moves you'd expect to have in a game like this, but some moves, if mistimed, leave you massively open to counterplays, like shooting a basketball into the Grand Canyon Open. Now, this game doesn't really have combos, but it does have pretty aggressive grabs, so look out for that. Now, on a deeper level, the core mechanics of this game lie in the arms themselves. Each character can equip different arms, some slow and heavy, others quick and weak, with elemental effects like fire, electricity, or my personal favorite, poison. You can mix and match too. A missile on one hand, scorpion claws on the other, or just 2 basic fists if you're feeling boring. If you like this, I bet you also like maining Ryu in Street Fighter 2, huh? There's also a super meter that charges as you fight, letting you unleash a rush attack, temporarily turning the match into a fight scene from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. But to me, the real charm of the game is the fighters, specifically the character designs. Now sure, anybody could say that about any fighting game, but ARMS stands out thanks to its creativity. In a lot of other fighters, half the roster is just muscular and or angry guys who just start to blend together. Not just in their own games, but across other games in the genre. But in ARMS, you could pick a character at random and still instantly recognize that they're from ARMS. The designs are that distinct, visually, thematically, and mechanically. Design isn't everything though, so how do the characters actually differ in this quirky boxing game? Each fighter has their own unique mechanic, usually activated by holding the dash or block button. Springman, the poster boy, has a shockwave parry, which is a smart fit for the first character on the roster. In my experience with fighting games, the first slot is usually meant for beginner characters, and this ability makes him a very approachable starting point. Ribbon Girl can perform multiple jumps, another simple but effective mechanic for what's likely your second pick as a new player, especially since she shares the box art with Springman. As you move further down the roster, things start getting more complex. Take Masongo for example. He has a spirit companion that can activate one of 3 buffs. Red increases his damage and gives him armor, blue boosts his mobility, and yellow speeds up his rush gauge refill. It's a layered mechanic that rewards situational awareness and timing. Then you got this freaking cheater turning the fight into a 1v1.5. Post-launch, Nintendo added free DLC fighters that actually felt like major updates, with my favorite of these new additions being Lola Pop. The fact that these are free editions really help keep the game alive, even if only just for a little bit. With such a colorful cast and your arms dictating how you fight, the game definitely doesn't slack off in this category. However, when it comes to picking the most appealing character though, that's whenever the game really makes you think. But once you've overcome this obstacle, picked your character, and are ready to throw hands, where exactly are you throwing them? And more importantly, what are you even doing in each match? Let's talk about the stages and modes, because while the core gameplay stays the same, ARMS did try to shake up things in a few interesting ways. The stages in ARMS aren't just cosmetic, they can actually affect your match. Some stages have trampolines that send you flying, others have breakable pillars for cover, and a few are just weird, like my personal favorite stage, DNA Lab. It's my favorite because of the memories I have of me and my friends freaking out whenever one of the test tubes on the stage breaks. We'd act like someone just committed murder. As for modes, you've got your standard versus mode, but within that you can pick different match types like 1v1 or 2v2. You've got V-ball, which is just volleyball but with punching, and hoops, where you literally dunk your opponent into a basketball net by grabbing them. There's also skill shot, where you try to punch more targets than your opponent, and headlock scramble, where a creepy looking head spawns in and when grabbed gives one fighter 6 arms instead of 2. Trust me, when you're facing the headlock, instant dread. For single players, or at least lonely players, you've got Grand Prix mode, which is your basic arcade ladder with some light story flavor. Beat all of the fighters, face the final boss, unlock some lore, not groundbreaking, but it gets pretty intense in the higher difficulties. And of course, there's online mode, which used to be bustling with players, but nowadays just looks like... So yeah, while the stage variety and mode lineup weren't anything revolutionary, they did enough to keep the game from feeling repetitive. At least while the game was still new, because to me, the modes are where the game slacks the most. But more on that later, because now it's time to talk about how people actually felt about ARMS. ARMS launched in June 2017 to generally solid reviews with a 77 on Metacritic and a 7.2 user score. Critics praised its originality, style, depth, but common complaints included a lack of content and the motion control heavy marketing, which turned some players off. Still, the game built a small but passionate competitive scene supported by Nintendo through events and tournaments. It sold over 2.6 million copies, which is not bad for a brand new IP, but it didn't stick around in the spotlight for long. Today, ARMS is fondly remembered by its fans, but it's definitely more of a niche title now, with Min Min's Smash appearance being its biggest recent moment. ARMS definitely brought something fresh to Nintendo's fighting lineup, but it was also a brand new IP with no built-in fan base. Our next game, Pokkén Tournament, on the other hand, did have one huge advantage though. It's Pokemon. You slap that name on anything and people are at least gonna give it a glance. But instead of a typical spin-off, Pokkén went for something different. Something that players had only been dreaming of. An actual Pokemon fighting game. So let's take a look at how it was delivered. Interestingly, Pokkén actually predates the Switch. Developed by Bandai Namco's Tekken team, Pokkén first launched in Japanese arcades in 2015, blending Pokemon with Tekken-style combat. The game later came to Wii U, building a cult following with its fresh take on Pokemon battles. Then in 2017, Pokkén Tournament DX hit the Switch, bringing in all the arcade content, adding new characters, and adding new modes, finally giving the game a broader audience. This is the definitive version of Pokkén and the one we'll be focusing on today. So how does it actually play? Let's dive in. Pokkén Tournament is a 1v1 fighter, but it plays very differently from Smash or ARMS, thanks to its unique phase system. Matches constantly shift between two modes, field phase and duel phase. Pokkén blends the footsies and counterplay of traditional fighters with the spacing and movement of arena fighters, creating a style all its own. In field phase, you move freely around a 3D arena, using ranged attacks to zone opponents or set up openings. Land a strong enough hit, and the match transitions into duel phase. Now it's side view like a traditional fighter, where combos become tighter and the pacing speeds up. This constant back and forth gives each match a unique rhythm that keeps you on your toes. Every Pokemon has light and strong attacks, ranged moves, a counter, and a grab. And much like rock, paper, scissors, everything has a direct counter. There's also the synergy gauge. Build it up, activate synergy burst, and unleash your burst attack. Some look insanely cool, some look downright terrifying, and some look hilariously unserious. Support Pokemon also play a key role. Before each match, you choose to assist, which can be called in for projectiles, buffs, traps, etc. It's an extra layer of strategy that gives you more control over how each match plays out. While the roster size of Pokkén is pretty good, the roster picks are where things actually get interesting. Instead of just stuffing in fan favorites, the devs chose Pokemon that make sense in a fighter, for the most part. And visually, Pokkén goes for a more realistic art style. It's like the Detective Pikachu movie, but actually pleasing to the eyes. Characters feel distinct in how they move and hit, which ties directly into the archetype they're built around. There are 4 battle styles in Pokkén. The standard style features well-rounded characters like Pikachu, power style is for slow-moving heavy hitters like Garchomp, speed style focuses on fast but lighter characters like Croagunk, and technical style is for the characters with complex movesets that reward strategic play like Gengar. And the character animations are a standout for sure. I'm not just talking about the special moves, I mean the basic attacks you can dish out. Every slam, spark, and beam looks great, and every move a Pokemon throws out genuinely feels like it has weight behind it. The animation and movement really elevate the realism of the whole game. To make Pokkén DX even more deluxe, the devs added even more fighters like Blastoise and Aegislash. That said, I wish they added just one more character. There's an obviously empty space on the character select screen that haunts me. Like, come on, Bandai, the space is just begging for Dewott to be thrown here. Hashtag Dewott for Pokkén. So yeah, between the phase system, support Pokemon, burst attacks, and a roster that blends powerhouses with curveballs, Pokkén gives you a lot to think about before you even press start. But once you have picked your fighter and you're ready to throw down, where are you fighting? What are you doing? Let's take a look at the stages and modes. Pokkén stages are all set in the Pokemon world, but they're more grounded than you'd expect. You're not fighting on the back of a giant floating Snorlax or anything wild like that. I mean, why would you even do that? That sounds ridiculous. Wait a minute. Most arenas take place in areas like training gyms, beaches, forests, and towns, and honestly, that works for this style of fighter. The more realistic visuals help sell the idea that these battles are actually happening in universe. Like, this is what Pokemon battles really look like if you zoomed in past the turn-based menus. The stages are all also circular in shape to accommodate the field phase movement, and their size can actually affect how often the match shifts into duel phase. A smaller stage means more close-range clashes, while bigger stages give zoners more room to breathe. As for modes, yeah, it's an ARMS situation to me. There's your standard single-player Ferrum League, where you climb through different ranked leagues, train your partner Pokemon, and eventually take on the champion. So your arcade ladder mode. There's single battle mode, which contains basic 1v1s, extra battles where items appear on stage, and team battle where each side gets to choose 3 Pokemon to fight with, all against a CPU opponent. And then there's local battle mode, which is just single battle mode but for people who actually have someone to play with, and online battle, which used to work but is somehow even less active than ARMS, at least from my recent testing. There's wireless battle where you can play Pokkén with multiple switches, and finally a practice mode with handy combo and character tutorials. But other than that, Pokkén doesn't have the wildest amount of content. Still, it gives you just enough to keep coming back with the daily challenge mode where you have to battle under special conditions, and My Town where you can find things such as battle records, profile customization, and Pokemon settings where you can distribute skill points you earned in battle. Something I really enjoy. As you win battles in single player, your Pokemon level up and earn points which you can assign to stats like attack, defense, synergy, or strategy. It's a simple system, but it adds replayability and lets you mold your favorite fighters to suit your playstyle. Kind of like how customizing ARMS loadouts work in ARMS. For example, I've dumped every single point I've earned so far for Machamp straight into his attack stat, because obviously I'm trying to turn him into One Punch Man Machamp. Or One Punch Machamp. This is the objectively correct way to build this character. So while Pokkén doesn't overload you with content, what's here is polished, replayable, and true to the world of Pokemon, just with a little extra punching. It's got a unique battle system, a fun roster, solid visuals, and just enough modes to hold your attention. But how did everyone else feel whenever this game hit the shelves? Let's talk about reception. Pokkén Tournament was well received across its various versions. It currently holds a 79 on Metacritic with a 7.6 user score. The original arcade release in Japan caught people's attention with its Pokemon meets Tekken gameplay, and while the Wii U port in 2016 earned praise for its depth and accessibility, it struggled to find a big audience. Criticisms included a small roster, limited single-player content, and awkward local multiplayer on Wii U. Pokkén Tournament DX on Switch fixed many of these issues, adding new characters, better multiplayer, and launching during the Switch's early hot streak. The game also carved out a solid competitive scene for a few years with events at EVO and official championships hosted by the Pokemon Company. While it never reached Smash level success, it held its own and remains respected within its niche community. Nowadays, Pokkén is kind of in that cult classic territory. It didn't light the world on fire, but it did carve out its own niche and prove that a Pokemon fighter could work. But to be completely honest, when anyone thinks about a Nintendo fighting game, only one series comes to mind. And it's not exactly a niche. Yup, it's time. We're talking Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Believe it or not, Smash Ultimate almost didn't happen. After finishing Smash 4, director Masahiro Sakurai wasn't even sure if the next Smash Bros. Game would be a direct sequel or just a port. But once the Switch took off, the decision was made. Bring back everyone. Everyone is here. With help from Bandai Namco, development began late 2016, upgrading the Smash 4 engine and creating what would become gaming's ultimate crossover. By E3 2018, the message was clear. No fighter is getting left behind. But how does the game actually play? Let's dive in. While ARMS and Pokkén follow more traditional 1v1 fighting rules in a sense, Smash does its own thing. The goal isn't to drain a health bar, it's to rack up damage and send your opponent flying. Controls are simple at first. You've got your attack button, special button, jump button, etc. But there's serious depth underneath. Directional influence, teching, edge guarding, it's a mix of strategy and chaos, especially with items, hazards, and sometimes even 8 players in the mix. What really sets Smash apart is its platforming. Positioning matters a ton, not just on the ground, but in the air, on elevated platforms, and even off stage. And what's especially unique is how each character's moveset interacts with that platforming. In most fighters, you jump. In Smash, you recover, wall jump, ledge cancel, and use platforms to your advantage. To me, Smash feels like if you took the movement mechanics and level design of a Mario, Donkey Kong, or Kirby game, combined them with the fighting mechanics of something like Street Fighter, but without the quarter circle inputs, and boom, you've got Smash. At least that's how I see it. And what's crazy is that no two matches ever feel or look the same. While ARMS gives you space and Pokkén gives you structure, Smash gives you options. Too many maybe. But when one of those options is pulling off the good old suck and cuck with King Dedede, well, I'm not complaining. And that gameplay variety wouldn't work without Smash Ultimate's massive lineup, not just in size, but in scope. What started as a Nintendo-only crossover has grown into a full-on gaming celebration. Nintendo, Sega, Capcom, Square Enix, Microsoft. This roster looks like someone hacked the copyright system. But these characters don't just look different, they play different. Want to zone? Try Samus. Want to rush down? Try Roy. Now those are somewhat traditional examples, but some characters just don't follow the rules. Like Hero, whose down special is basically 16 moves in one. Or Pokemon Trainer, who's a lightweight, medium weight, and heavyweight all wrapped in one. Or Steve, who frankly shouldn't be allowed to do half the stuff that he can. There's really no other game where you can argue that 90% of the roster is broken in some way. But in most cases, that's thanks to character accuracy, which is one of Smash's biggest strengths, depending on who you ask. To bring up Steve again, sure, he might be the most cracked character in fighting game history, but without his block building mechanics, would he even still be Steve? If you have mixed opinions on Steve and Smash, just wait until they add Jonesy. Hashtag Jonesy for Smash. And then came the DLC. With 2 full seasons, Ultimate kept fans guessing and screaming with every reveal.
Who else can they add? Oh! Oh my god!
Joker, Banjo-Kazooie, Sephiroth, Steve, Sora, each one felt like a mini E3 event. Whether you love the picks or not, Smash owned gaming conversations for years. Smash Ultimate took Everyone Is Here quite seriously, and the result is basically a playable museum of gaming's greatest icons. From 8-bit classics to modern legends, it somehow blends into one beautiful mess. Now you can't bring together all of these gaming icons to fight each other on nothing, so where are you fighting, and what are you doing? Let's get into the stages and modes. If the roster is the heart of Smash Ultimate, then the stages make up the brain. And just like the fighters, there are a lot of them, each pulled from different games. One moment you're fighting on a speeding F-Zero card, and the next moment you're fighting in a yoga studio. But these aren't just pretty backdrops, they shape the fight and how you think, which is why I made that brain analogy. Some stages are wide and flat, others have walls, platforms, hazards, or constantly changing layouts that force you to adapt. And with their hazard toggles and alternate forms like Omega and Battlefield, you can customize how chaotic, or calm, you want things. And if that's not enough, Ultimate technically has infinite stages thanks to the stage builder mode. Not only can you make your own, but you can also download community-made stages through the online mode. Yo, wait, is that?
Hey y'all, Scott here.
Stages are a key part of the strategy. Knowing how to shark through platforms, tech off walls, or avoid falling off a stage is just as important as landing a smash attack. And then there's the modes, and Smash Ultimate is stacked. There's Standard Smash with a wild level of rule customization, Classic Mode with themed arcade ladders for every character, and World of Light, where Kirby is the only character capable of saving everyone in the roster from a great evil. Yep, only Kirby, out of all 90 characters. I don't think you're supposed to think about it too hard. In World of Light, you'll encounter spirits, which play a major role in this game, acting as a sort of replacement for the collectible trophies from previous entries. There are over 1,000 of them, and equipping them to your fighter can grant special abilities like auto healing, boosting specific special moves, or even growing huge when your health hits a critical point. Collecting them all isn't just a fun side activity, it's a full-on time sink if you're the completionist type. Add in Squad Strike, Multi-Man Smash, Home Run Contest, creating your own Mii fighters, Smashdown, and even a full tournament bracket mode, and you've got options on top of options. Whether you're a sweaty 1v1 Final Destination no items kind of guy, or a guy who just wants to live out your childhood dream of watching Mario fight Sonic, Smash Ultimate has a character and stage for you. Now, when people were finally able to get their hands on this game, what did they think about it? Let's talk reception. Yeah, I think we all know how Smash Ultimate turned out. The game launched in December 2018 to critical acclaim with a 93 on Metacritic and an 8.7 user score. It's the best-selling fighting game of all time, with over 36 million copies sold, and contains one of the most active competitive scenes around. With a roster this massive and content for days, it quickly became a staple at tournaments and casual game nights alike. Sure, the online still leaves something to be desired, but in terms of sheer impact, Smash Ultimate absolutely delivered. So now that we've broken everything down, how do these three games stack up? One thing I really admire about Nintendo's approach to fighting games is that each of these titles tries to shake up the formula in its own way. ARMS puts the camera behind your character, your punches fly and stretch out, and the whole arm system and how each arm can have its own elemental effect allows you to adapt your playstyle basically on the fly. Pokkén blends arena fighters with traditional 2D fighters and creates something truly unique, which makes for some really dynamic matches. And Smash, of course, took platform fighting and perfected it. It's honestly still the best platform fighter that you could ever play. ARMS really shines in how it's easy to pick up and play. The gameplay's simple, there's lore tucked in there, and the characters and style of the game are amazing. Plus, the game is full of funny moments with friends. But when it comes to modes, while I admire the effort, I feel like ARMS game modes don't really take full advantage of the gameplay. Hoops is only fun with other people, 1 versus 100 is kind of fun, and then you have V-Ball and Skill Shot, which feel like afterthoughts. There's no way the devs looked at the gameplay of ARMS and thought, yeah, let's add a volleyball mode. Skillshot especially could have used some extra flair, like obstacles and hazards that can mess you up, other than just the other player on the other side of the map. And with the smallest roster of the three, I think ARMS is definitely due for a sequel. And if the devs are taking suggestions, might I propose a crossover character? You know, ARMS isn't Nintendo's first attempt at a boxing game. Hashtag Glassjoe for ARMS. Pokkén absolutely nails character variety and art style. The fights feel unique across the board, but honestly, I think the game might be taking itself too seriously. You can kind of see it in the art direction. While I really like the realistic graphics and Pokemon designs, it leaves the UI looking a bit bland. And where are the fun items like ARMS or Smash have? This does not count. There's avatar customization, sure, but what about the Pokemon themselves? I mean, you're looking at the Pokemon 99% of the time. Why can't you put some goofy hats or clothes on them? Alternate costumes for the Pokemon you're fighting as would have made for amazing content to grind towards, especially since there's not much else to collect in the game. And while the field phase and dual phase mechanics of the game are really cool, I always thought that it was a missed opportunity to not have any modes where you're specifically just fighting in field phase or just fighting in dual phase. The game just could have used way more creative ways to play. And if you haven't played this game for a while, let me just say the learning curve isn't easy. Ask me how I know. Then there's Smash Ultimate. In a lot of ways, it kind of balances everything. But if I had to nitpick, there's not a lot of character interactions or any kind of lore moments that you would hope for in a huge crossover like this. But gameplay wise, Smash Ultimate strikes a really good middle ground. It's way easier to pick up than Pokkén, and it's way deeper than ARMS. And overall, it's the most versatile of the 3 games. And beyond gameplay itself, Nintendo often focuses on bringing people together. And some of these games lend themselves to that better than others. I find that ARMS is actually the easiest game to whip out in a group setting. At its core, it's a boxing game, which almost anyone can grasp quickly, and the skill gap between new players and veterans isn't as wide as it would be for Smash or Pokkén. Smash is just a bit harder to get into than ARMS, but it does have the advantage of supporting up to 8 players, assuming you have enough controllers, and it offers way more modes to mess around with. Pokkén, while a great game, is definitely the hardest sell in a group setting. It takes more time to learn and rewards dedicated play more than just pickup sessions. That's kind of how I see it. If you're looking for competitive depth, then Pokkén and Smash are for you. If you want something lighter and funnier, then you have ARMS and Smash. But based on the categories that we've discussed, Smash seems to come out on top most of the time. So when it comes to a winner, it really depends on how you like to play. Because really, this video isn't about crowning the best fighting game. It was about celebrating what makes each of Nintendo's fighting games interesting. And just for the sake of this whole format and picking between 3 different things, I will say that Smash Ultimate is the winner. But what do you think? You can let me know in the comments below. And if you like the video, then like the video. And if you like me, then subscribe. I've been Majin Sprite, or you can just call me Sprite, but never Majin. And hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye now.